Hey everyone, welcome back to Todos Santos. Over the next few episodes, we're going to be working on this area here, which is going to be dedicated to the city's main cargo port. Of course, this is going to generate a lot of traffic, so we're going to add a trumpet interchange to hook up to the north-south freeway, a SPUI to allow traffic to actually access the port, and then a Y interchange over here in the west to connect to the east-west freeway. Now, I tried a couple different variations of interchange here. I tried a really weird Y interchange that involved some tunnels and flyover ramps, and it just didn't work. There's not really enough space in this vicinity to make a realistic looking one, at least as far as I was able to do it. So we're going to be going with a trumpet interchange, which isn't quite as high capacity or as cool looking, but it does the job. And anyway, most of the traffic that's accessing the port is coming from the other direction and exiting the other direction. So this is really just the bare minimum kind of interchange that we are able to fit in here. And like I said, it works fine. So whatever. Now, I did have to raise a few houses in the vicinity to fit this ramp in, but that's never stopped anyone before, and thankfully these aren't actually real people living here, so I'm not too worried about that. Now, I did have some trouble here because this interchange also has to serve as a local interchange to access the surface roads, so it was kind of annoying to have to fit in another off-ramp and another on-ramp, because the trumpet interchange can be a little bit annoying to make. Really, I just tried this like 3 or 4 times. You're just seeing pretty much the last iteration of this build that I attempted. And even then, it still takes a lot of just massaging things with Move It and node controller and that kind of thing until you get something that looks fairly realistic. Now, normally I would make a trumpet interchange using 2 one-way freeway ramps to make the actual curving trumpet part of it. But I wanted to try something a little bit different here. So I use a 2-way highway that curves around here underneath. I just think it looks a little bit cleaner, and I did want to make this interchange more compact than some of the ones I've made in the city. And I thought that just saved on a little bit of space, a little bit easier to make, but it just ends up being a little bit more difficult to get the transition from the 2-way road to the 2 one-way ramps. But thankfully, we now have node controller, so that's pretty much not a problem at all. In the old days, that would have been kind of annoying, but yeah, node controller, amazing. I'm also using the elevated version of the one-way ramps in certain places, just because dealing with the way the road kind of sticks to the terrain can be kind of annoying when you're doing a multi-level interchange like this. So I just find it a little bit easier to use the ramp versions. Plus it has built-in barriers on the edge, so you don't really have to go in with IMT or details or decorative networks or whatever and decorate it yourself. Also, at this point, I didn't have a 2-way freeway that had the, American-style yellow line in the center, so I went in and manually added that with the intersection marking tool. I should mention, in a few episodes, we're going to, and I think I've hinted at this before, but we're going to replace a lot of the highways in the city with a more consistent pack, which doesn't rely on the outdated Roads United mod, which, it still works even to this day, but it can be a little inconsistent. And it doesn't cover all roads because it hasn't been updated in a while. So unfortunately, we're going to have to say goodbye to that. I'm not going to remove the mod or anything because there are some roads that I just have not replaced. But for the most part, we're going to be moving on to using, I believe it's called just the North American Freeway pack, which is a fantastic mod. And it looks so good. But that's a little bit of a digression. So I'm going to go back to the build now. Although first, really quickly, you can see here how wildly inconsistent all these different highway assets are, just because some of them aren't covered by Roads United. Anyway, now I'm running this bridge across the river, which is kind of the transition point between the big bay that the city surrounds and the main river that runs east to west, which we did a little detailing along last episode. But anyway, we're moving in the other direction, and I'm just preparing that bridge to connect up to the main harbor freeway that we're going to be working on in just a moment. But before we get to that, I realized I hadn't actually added a connection to the main freeway from the trumpet here, so I need to do that, and then also figure out a way to connect this frontage road up to it. So what I end up doing is I realize I have these 2 roads that are kind of running perpendicular to the freeway here, and I just turn those into one-way roads, which works pretty well. There's already a bus line there that kind of lines up with the way I want the one-way roads to go, so I just do that, and that just makes it a little bit more sensible that these are kind of like feeder roads to connect to and from the freeway. And then I just really quickly put down some grass assets to make it look a little bit more lively. And as always, I put down a bunch of trees. So before we do anything with the road network here, I wanted to just flatten this whole area out and just dedicate this entire rectangular area to the port, because working on a hill can be fun when you're doing like a neighborhood or a natural area or something, but I think the port is just going to be the sort of area that we need to have perfectly flat, or else it's going to be really, really frustrating. I mean, I've already done the port build, and I can report back that I'm glad I did that. Although we do have some problems, but I don't want to get ahead of myself. That's for the next couple episodes. But anyway, I'd had this single freeway lane kind of drawn out right on the shoreline. You might have noticed that before. That was just to designate an angle for this area. So I just copied and pasted that in order to make sure that it was perfectly parallel to this kind of whole area, so that we can get everything on a nice rectangular right angle grid, which is just easier to work with. And I just really wanted to have the setup be as good as I could, because this is kind of a big and intimidating build to do a big cargo port like this. So yeah, I just wanted to make sure it was all ready to go. Now we're hopping over to the western end. Obviously it looks like it's east, but we're facing south, so we're over on the west. Anyway, we're doing a kind of a cool Y interchange here that's going to develop as we go through and do the various builds that are part of the overarching build of the cargo port. So we're going to add in access for surface roads, but it's just starting out as a very simple Y interchange. So like I mentioned, most of the traffic that accesses the port comes from this freeway. So I wanted to have it be a fairly high capacity, high speed interchange so that we don't have our big cargo trucks flipping off the road or anything like that. Not that that would ever actually happen, but you got to role play a little bit, or otherwise you're not going to have anything to motivate your decisions in this game. Anyway, to go for that sort of look, I'm just trying to get the ramps to be as big and sweeping as possible. And I'm also making sure that there are 2 lanes per entry and exit ramp onto this freeway, just so that it can handle all the truck traffic and car traffic that's going to be going through here. Now, unfortunately, we're not really going to have time to do interchange detailing this episode, but again, as we go through this series of port builds, we're going to be doing details and adjustments to these interchanges as we go. But now I wanted to get to work on the frontage road system. So below the freeway, as you can see it here, is going to be the actual port itself with all the containers and services and all that kind of stuff. And then above the freeway is going to be a bit of a kind of warehouse commercial area. So we're going to have like warehouse stores and car dealerships and that kind of thing. And that's loosely based off the similar port area in San Juan. But I'm just kind of doing my own spin on it. But anyway, I needed to have a frontage road here with a sidewalk and everything so that vehicles and people can actually access the businesses that we're going to put down here. And then I didn't really need a frontage road on the other side of the freeway because there's going to be a dedicated avenue that's going to carry all the non-freeway traffic through the industrial port area. And now I'm just putting back this last off-ramp here, just trying to make it a little bit more of a realistic curve. And we're going to hop over to the other end of the freeway. This is a little bit of a bonus interchange, and this is inspired by kind of a weird, funky little interchange that is in the actual inspiration for this build. And that's this interchange that almost serves as like a diamond interchange, but because they already have this bridge sloping down, instead of building another bridge for these exit and entry lanes to attach to, they just run kind of a loopy little road around underneath the pre-existing bridge, which seems like a pretty good use of your resources. If you're going to be building this bridge anyway, might as well just have this little loop around area instead of investing a bunch more money in another bridge. And anyway, it's not going to be a super highly trafficked interchange, so it's not really a big deal that they have to drive a little bit longer to get where they're going from the freeway. But I think the final interchange ends up adding just this lovely little weird area right at the edge of the port. And that's just the kind of thing I love having in this city, which is these kind of quirky, unexpected pieces of infrastructure. And we're also going to decorate this area with some interesting woods and other things. And it all blends together and makes a really cool and interesting part of the city. I think you're going to really enjoy the details in this area and just the port build as a whole. When everything's said and done, I think it's going to be one of the coolest and best looking areas of the city. Now, I don't know when everything is going to be said and done. It's going to be quite a while. I'm thinking this series will probably go, 70, 80 episodes. That's kind of how it's feeling. I don't know. Maybe it'll be more. Maybe it'll be less. I really have no idea. Now, just to reiterate, all these road assets are going to be changed pretty soon. So once we do come in and improve these assets, I just wanted to give you a little view of what it looks like beforehand so you can kind of see how it's changed. I'm really just doing some basic, kind of ugly IMT work just to temporarily have everything match up to a certain degree. It's all going to be improved and smoothed out soon enough. Next up, we're going to approximately the middle of the Harbor Freeway here and putting in a SPUI, also known as a single point urban interchange, although that's quite a bit less fun to say, in my opinion. I've made one of these in the series before, I think back in episode 27 or something like that. If I remember, I'll put a link up in the right-hand corner. For those of you who have access to cards, there'll be a card up there. This one I think ends up looking a little bit nicer than the previous one. You know, generally when you make things multiple times in the same city, it's going to look a little better the second time. Although that's not exactly a given. I've certainly made worse versions on my second attempt for various things, but I think this one ends up looking pretty good. There's a cool feature here where we have the frontage road, and instead of just running the frontage road along here and then connecting the off-ramps to that, the frontage road just kind of runs around the whole construction of the interchange. And then next episode, when we're preparing the last few pieces of this area for the port build, we're going to stake a tiny little river behind here. And it just kind of looks really cool to have this road running along just this small river. And everything kind of makes sense and works together. And it just really looks like they've, the city planners here have come in and fit all this infrastructure into the pre-existing geography instead of having to have some big project to flatten everything out and, bury the river or redirect the river or whatever. I probably sound like I keep getting ahead of myself in terms of this build, but I'm just really excited to show off all these cool builds that we're doing here. So really quickly, I'll describe how this interchange works. You basically have all the off-ramps and on-ramps meeting at one intersection directly underneath the freeway, and that all feeds either, if they turn one direction, it feeds into the frontage road. If they turn the other direction, then it goes onto this road that's perpendicular to the frontage road, and that's going to connect up with the custom avenue that we're going to build next episode to service all the businesses and industries along the port area. So that's pretty much all we're going to do with the SPUI this time. Just coming in and doing a little bit of lane mathematics, changing the bridge to be 2 lanes per side so that one of the lanes on the freeway that leads up to it transitions either into an exit or an on-ramp lane. Now, the last couple minutes of this episode aren't directly related to the port, but it's just going to involve expanding some of the roads and the rail network here, just to kind of get a sense for what the context of the port is going to look like. A lot of this stuff is going to change, like the way the rail crosses the Y interchange here. It's not quite perfect, so just as with the rest of the stuff in this area with these interchanges, they're going to be detailed and adjusted as we go and as the needs of the vicinity here change. But I did want to show you enough just to get a feel for how I kind of set this up and where I tried to run everything. I do want this rail line to run west through the suburbs, and it kind of turns, I guess, almost into a commuter rail sort of thing, even though it's just part of the city's main metro line. In fact, that where the rail crosses the Y interchange there is going to be quite a bit different as we go through here over the next few episodes, but it actually ends up being one of my favorite parts of the city. Because we do a lot of detailing and a lot of just fine-tuning and making sure the interchange looks nice and hopefully realistic. But anyway, we're moving back over here, and I'm really not sure what I want to do with this rail line here that goes perpendicular. It looks a little weird to just have this big curve and then have it run up elevated for a while. I'm not sure if I'm going to keep that or if I'm going to do something else with it. I haven't actually gotten to the build where that rail line goes yet. So really, as we do all these things, they're just kind of temporary. And I'm sort of just reaching some feelers out and kind of seeing where I want these various things to go. And as the needs of the area change, like I said, all this infrastructure is going to move around a little bit here and there. Now, it didn't quite feel right to do a build without tons of trees, so I come in here and just extend this little riverside woods a little bit. Of course, this would be saltwater, so just pretend that those are mangroves, okay? Now, just to set the stage for the port, I needed to put this little key asset down just to make it look nice and flat, because I couldn't stand it with all this weird bumpy terrain everywhere. Just doesn't look good, not a good look, so need to get rid of that. And to get rid of any of the weird terrain that's kind of clipping out underwater there, just put up a couple roads, push them right up against the key with Move It, and that takes care of that problem, nice and easy. So this area looks really weird and discombobulated and just not very cohesive, not very good at the moment. I promise it's all going to come together. It's going to be a lot of fun over the next few episodes to fill this in and do some really interesting port industrial kind of builds. I really hope that you enjoyed this episode of Todos Santos. As always, I really appreciate your time, and I absolutely cannot wait to see you on the next one. Bye!